Thanks for staying and joining us. I know we went a bit over the time that we'd indicated for this, but I appreciate media staying so that we can respond to questions. I mean, even as Ferguson was burning, the police chief, the city manager, and I were in immediate communications about Grand Rapids and what to expect here. And the natural outgrowth of that conversation was, what do we need to do in our city? What are the policies that we need to put in place? What are the practices that we need to implement that will ensure that nothing like what happened in Ferguson ever happens in our city? And so we, as the city manager this morning pointed out, immediately convened a leadership in the community, the civil rights leadership. We began working with our Community Relations Commission, and we pulled together this task force that's been working over the past month and a half, almost 2 months now, to come up with a set of recommendations that you have before you today. The recommendations, I think, may be self-explanatory, but we wanted to give this opportunity for you to ask any of the three of us any questions that you might have. Before I do that, Chief, the manager's had a chance to speak this morning. Would you like to offer some comments, and then we'll turn it over for questions?
Just to say a few words, and that would be to echo the city manager and the mayor's sentiments that first I want to reiterate that we have a great police department. I've heard it consistently. I was aware of the reputation of the Grand Rapids Police Department long before I came here. I've had the privilege to serve as a chief in 3 different states now, and I've never been surrounded by men and women who are as dedicated and as professional as the Grand Rapids Police Department. Having said that, we're not content to rest on our laurels. We want to be a city that other departments work to emulate. We want to be the place that departments come to look at the Grand Rapids model, to see how we've continued to improve what's already a good department and take it to the next level. And I think these steps are comprehensive, they're well thought out. They were done with input from the community. A lot of people's voices were heard in this process, and we look forward to working with consultants in large part because we're very confident that what they're going to do is come in and take a look at the processes and the implementation that we have within our department and reassure us that what we do is really stellar. So I look forward to working to implement these recommendations.
Thank you, Chief. So let me open it up to media for questions.
Chief, body cam sort of wag the dog, wag the tail of the dog, whatever the phrase is, on this. But this is a comprehensive document, which of 12 would you say would have the biggest impact, or do you think will have the biggest impact on police community relations going forward?
I think, Matt, your observation is dead on. I think the body cams and the ensuing policy is a significant game changer, not just here in Grand Rapids, but in terms of law enforcement nationally, in terms of what the public expectation is, what the policy will be, how it will be implemented, has the potential to change the nature of community and police relations. To the credit of this community and the credit of the elected officials and the police department, we're taking a very thoughtful approach. We're not implementing cameras before we've had this dialogue and had this discussion and have solid policy in place that everyone's comfortable with. So I think that's really a game changer.
Yes. So that question on privacy and different protocols, how important is that in the overall framing of what you're going to be doing and what sort of things will you be looking at?
Specifically with regard to body cameras?
Yeah, citizens' privacy.
Yes, okay. Let's start with body cameras.
I think it's paramount. The mayor and the city manager have both alluded to some of the concerns that we have. When we're talking about relationships that are built on trust, there are a lot of situations that individuals, when they deal with police departments, would not want recorded and potentially shared. So whether it's in dealing with a domestic violence victim, whether it's dealing with a parent who's seeking advice because they've got a child who's substance abuse, whether it's a myriad of seeing people at their worst moments, we need protocols in place before those situations arise. And that's what we're currently in the process of developing. We've looked at best practices across the country. We've already started to vet a model policy. So we're well on our way to identifying and addressing those concerns.
Where's that model policy?
We've looked at best practices from across the country. It's such an evolving issue that really feedback from around the country is not hard to find. Department of Justice has released reports. Police Executive Research Forum has released reports. So what we're looking to do is pick and choose from the best that's out there and really put together a solid basis.
Let me add another element to an answer to the question, and that is that technologies are evolving very rapidly. Of course, technology evolves rapidly, and this is only one of what may be a wave of surveillance technology that's out there in the community that has implications for citizen privacy. The question has been raised by the American Civil Liberties Union with the City of Grand Rapids about the use of drones. Would we use drones if they were available to us, and what kind of a process would we go through in order to make decisions about using new technologies that might have implications for citizen privacy. There will be a whole set of recommendations the city attorney is working on right now that will address the larger issue, even beyond body cameras, around surveillance technology.
Can you talk a little bit about improving diversity training for the community as well?
Please.
Within the police department, any training we get is well received. We've got one of the best trained police departments in the state of Michigan. Other departments really look to us as a model in terms of the internal training that we've put in place. Having said that, training is continually evolving. Methodologies are continually changing, issues are constantly changing. So this will be an opportunity for us to get some new dialogue going within the department, to hear perhaps from some people who've been underrepresented on a national level. So we're looking forward to implementing any type of training, and our training is extremely diverse. We've done a very good job at building a program that's sensitive culturally, sensitive racially, sensitive in terms of gender. This will just take it to the next step.
Did I hear Commissioner Lanier say that we expect an outcome to be a reduction in the percentage of blacks that are arrested in our city? The disparity she referenced, is that an expectation?
Well, yeah, I think, let me first try to speak to that, and then invite Chief and Manager to speak to it. The number that she cited is a real number. It's a result of research that we've done. The conclusions that one jumps to from that number are why, let me phrase that differently. We ought not jump to conclusions on that number without first doing the good background investigation, evaluation of the data that this report recommends. But to your question, if there is a disparate impact and it's the result of bias, then absolutely we will and we must address that. Chief, Manager, anything further you'd say on that?
I just wanted to clarify the last point. That's the key here. There are many variables that affect the distribution of justice in this country. And our concern, our focus is only what we can focus on, and that is the role of GRPD in a disparate impact on arrest rates, on traffic stops, whatever it might be. Beyond that, it's not something that we're able to address through these recommendations.
So do you think that there is a problem with disparities? I mean, let me be clear on that. Do any of you feel like there is a problem within the police department on disparities?
Sure. I do not feel that there is an issue in terms of disparate enforcement. I think what there is there's a national discussion taking place about systemic and historic issues and criminal justice as it applies to a large segment of our community. what I've seen within the Grand Rapids Police Department and what independent consultants have already told us is that we do a very good job. That being said, if we can address or identify some of the issues that are plaguing other places in the country and answer some of those questions before they become a hot button issue here, I think we'll be better positioned if we should ever undergo a tragedy to put people and community members in a place of comfort in terms of what our protocols are and what we've done in the past and what we're looking to do in the future.
Do both of you agree with that, city manager and mayor? I believe the city manager agrees with that.
Absolutely, yes. You know, in 2004, there was an extensive study here in Grand Rapids of our police department, and it was found that we do not, or did not, racially profile. And the part that's so positive about our police department is they're happy to undergo that study again.
So we probably wouldn't be here were it not for events in Ferguson, Staten Island, and beyond.
That's a good question, Peter. They certainly have been a catalyst for discussion here and urgent discussion here and around the country. Questions of privacy, as raised earlier, were already on the agenda before Ferguson, but questions of disparate impact, for example, or profiling, gained a brand new urgency when all of a sudden cities were going up in flames.
To answer your question, Peter, I don't think any city is immune from the issues that happen in Staten Island and Ferguson, including ours. So by having this discussion and putting these recommendations in place before we get to a point of crisis, I think really benefits the community, benefits the department, and I think it's a prudent thing to do.
What is the timeline for the implementation of the points?
Implementation of, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there, as you have a chance to go through these 12 recommendations, each establishes its own timeline. Some as early as March 10th of this year, others as late as December 10th of this year. But even that is a very compressed and aggressive timeline. We expect to be able to make those timelines. Unless we find that with some of the consultant work, it gets dragged out a bit. But we believe we can make those timelines.
Money. I mean, where's the money come from for this? I mean, you got body cams, you got consultants, which are expensive. You have all these things that are going to have to be paid for. I know it's a little early in the game for me to think about that, but it probably needs to be thought about.
Well, it's never too early to think about that, and in fact, the city manager has been thinking about that and made some comments in there, and I'll ask him to repeat the comments here.
There are really three potential sources for us to find this funding. One is the City Commission each year establishes what they call a contingent account. It's a bucket of money for emergencies that come up and they need to take care of something right now. And in this past year, they put $1 million in that contingent account. Typically, in a normal year, things do come up and that money ends up being spent throughout the year. This year, for reasons that I don't understand, it hasn't been touched. So there is some money to begin implementation for these programs, say purchasing body cams. Also, I do believe some transformational recommendations will continue to come out of here. And you may be aware of our transformation fund, that we use monies that we have put aside to reinvest in ourselves to achieve transformational outcomes. So that's a second source. And then third, I am currently in the process of preparing the upcoming budget that will be given to the City Commission in April. And so I know at least one of these recommendations will be in that budget, and that is to hire additional community police officers.
We're in a bad. I mean, we're in a better economy now. I mean, would this have happened in 6, 7, 8 years ago when we were in a much worse economy? I mean, are we just kind of, I don't want to say lucking out, but I mean,
Well, yeah, let me be clear from a non-political point of view. We don't have enough money. We're not out of the woods. Sure, the economy's a little bit better than it was, but the city of Grand Rapids has a lot of work ahead of it in order that we can become a fully sustainable community. Having said that, I can't imagine too many higher priorities in this. We need to address this. We need to reprioritize if necessary to find the funding to make this happen.
Okay, how many police officers are you looking to hire by September?
That's still not decided yet, but we currently have 13 community police officers. We'd like to greatly expand. So I think it's something less than an additional 13 and something more than 1. So it's someplace in there.
And then the training, the police training, there was an item there about more, you know, I don't know if it was, how it was titled, cultural training, diversity training. How is that any different from what I assume you have some in place already?
We have quite a bit in place already, and it's constantly evolving. What this will do, I think, is give us an opportunity to freshen it up, whether that means partnering with the Urban League or NAACP or Link. We're constantly taking what we do in training and making it as relevant and time sensitive as we can. So this will give us a fresh set of eyes on what we're currently doing at our in-service training and give us an opportunity to partner with some and build relationships with some other diverse groups within the community.
Chief, I just wondered if you had any input on these recommendations, and if so, what was your input?
This was a continuing dialogue. These are robust recommendations. I think they carry a lot of weight. There were a lot of voices at the table, and a lot of ideas were discussed, and a lot of input and give and take. At the end of the day, the officers, the men and women that I represent, recognize that body cameras are a trend nationally. What I hear from them is they're very proud, rightfully so, with the job that they do. We have a very robust in-car camera program at the moment. What this body camera program will do is take it to the next level, and I think overwhelmingly the public will just be all the more comfortable in what a fine department and what a fine job the men and women do.
Let me be a little more direct on answering that, so that the chief can maintain some level of modesty. He was at the table for all of the citizen meetings that this task force has had, was deeply engaged in the conversation, attended, as far as I know, all of the public hearings, community hearings, and conversations that we had. And when it came down to drafting, it was and consolidating all of that in a funnel. These two gentlemen plus our city attorney Catherine Mish were the three final drafters. So the chief's hand is fingerprints are all over this.
Having said that, I hope that, and the city manager and the mayor have been very good at sharing this sentiment, but I hope it doesn't get lost in the editing process, and I really want it to be shared. The community, to their credit, what we often heard was, we recognize how good a police department we have. We recognize what a fine job you do. This takes us to the next level. We heard that even from people who had criticisms. They still quantified it by recognition of the work that our department does. I don't want that to be lost in this document. I think the document takes great pains. It starts with that recognition. It closes with that recognition. It brings into play the fact that outside entities such as International City Management Association, ICMA, have recognized independently what a fine department we have. So these recommendations really take us to the next level. It takes a very fine product and looks to make it a product that other departments of our size around the country look to emulate.
I need to get commissioners back into the chambers. Let me invite one-on-one questions at this point following the press conference. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mayor.